Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Alyssa Wagner, and I'm an environmental specialist within the City of Carlsbad's Sustainable Materials Management Division. I am joined here with me today by Avecita Jones, the Senior Program Manager of our division, and Tyla Montgomery Soylu of Brick Anthony and Associates. We are excited to be here today to discuss and share a little bit about the City of Carlsbad's process of setting up an edible food recovery program in accordance with SB 1383. And with that, I will go ahead and hand it off to Avecita to get started.
So it is a pleasure to be part of this webinar, and thank you for inviting us. We are very happy to share with you some lessons learned as we navigate the intricacies of establishing an edible food recovery program for our beautiful city of Carlsbad. The focus of SB 1383 regulation is to reduce the impact of climate change by reducing the disposal of organic waste in the landfill. And interesting enough, SB 1383 seeks to address the intersection of three key issues that have historically been independent: climate change, solid waste, and food insecurity. SB 1383 edible food recovery program requirements include educating the generators about food recovery options, which Alyssa will be discussing in a bit, increasing access to food recovery organizations and services, which is what I will try to address, evaluating increasing edible food recovery capacity, monitoring generators, and reporting edible food recovery progress to CalRecycle. These edible food recovery program requirements place new responsibilities on cities who have limited historic role in the food recovery space and limited capacity staff-wise. When we learned about these requirements, we knew that we had our work cut out and deciding how to proceed to implement this program, since our city did not have an established edible food recovery program. I'm not gonna lie, we tried to pass it to another department or another division that wanted it, but it appeared that no one wanted that program. Although there are some other departments in our city that work with food insecure population, we decided that we will be hosting this program. So we started, if you can please change the slide. We started by assessing the food donation landscape in the city to better understand the role of the various players impacting food recovery. Can you change to the next slide, please? The San Diego Food System Alliance analyzed food donor and recipient data provided by the San Diego Food Bank and Feeding San Diego. And comparison was done with actual food donations data to projected food donation data for the Tier 1 and Tier 2 generators. This analysis revealed that approximately 2.3 million pounds of currently uncaptured food are potentially available for rescue from these generators. That's 2.3 million pounds, you heard correctly. So assessing edible food recovery capacity and building capacity where is needed the most was absolutely critical for our program. So as we continue setting up the food recovery program, we needed to take action to prevent edible food from going to the landfill, but rather directed or redirected to its highest and best use to feed people. It didn't take long to find out that food recovery is often a complex system that involves transportation and delivery logistics, food safety requirements and guidelines, and an ongoing coordination between food donors and recipients. Additionally, food recovery often crosses, like in our city, jurisdiction boundaries, adding additional challenges for coordination. If you can please change the slide. So these are some of the key findings from the analysis that was done of who was donating. If you can go to the next slide, please. And that provided some information about what who were donating in 2020. And if you can go to the next slide, please. And this gives you a good information of where the food is going from our city. Is going as far as the Spring Valley. This provided a lot of information for a program. If you can go to the next slide. So to better understand how to expand capacity for edible food recovery, we hosted a series of focus groups. We wanted to learn. So the findings of these focus groups are explored in further detail in the Carlsbad Food Recovery Analysis Report, and it is on our website, so you're welcome to access it. But let's review some of the focus group key findings. From the food recovery organization capacity perspective, the logistics and planning involvement in food recovery are resource intensive. Expanding food recovery will require investment in additional resources for existing organizations and for new organizations. From the food donor relationships perspective, donation dumping is an unaddressed burden for food recovery organizations. And as a matter of fact, we learned that it's a cost at times. Food donors' fear of liability limits food donations. So we knew that we have to implement quite a bit of outreach. And then open communication is the foundation of successful relationships. Now, from the food bank perspective, we learned that the food donor onboarding process is very similar between Feeding San Diego and the San Diego Food Bank, and relies mainly on food donors reaching out to the food banks. So hopefully that will change once we are reaching out to the tier 1 donors. And then finally, we learned that increased food recovery capacity is necessary in the city of Carlsbad. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Tyla to address how we identified our tier 1s and tier 2s. Thank you.
Okay, so I am going to very, very quickly just go through the process and a couple of objectives. So first off, identifying the tier 1 and tier 2 generators, who they are within the city, as well as quantifying as required as part of the edible food recovery capacity planning that the cities are required to conduct, quantifying the edible food or estimating how much edible food is being disposed by these generators. So in a nutshell, it was gleaning through more than 1,000 food-related businesses and narrowing down the list through cross-referencing multiple data sets and business licenses, et cetera, both within the city and also lists and resources from Cal Recycle and DPH to narrow down who are these tier 1 and tier 2 generators. Next slide. And how much edible food do they dispose? And so just a snapshot of the results. So we estimated using a calculator tool developed within the county of San Diego, more than 10,000 tons of food waste or food scraps disposed by these generators, these tier 1 and tier 2s. And if we're looking at a planning number, for purposes of a capacity planning, the food recovery program, we're looking at the 2,300 tons of maximum ton of food rescue potential from these generators. And by and large, food distributors and wholesale food vendors, the largest proportion of rescue potential from those two sectors. That was a surprise to me, but I guess not really, because Carlsbad is very much an industrial, lots of industrial uses and manufacturing and research. So it does make sense that they would house the wholesale food vendors and the distributors in these large type industries. And then more than 50 tier 2 restaurants located in the city, 14 supermarkets, and more than 40 of the wholesale food vendors. So next slide. So who are these businesses? Bitch and Sauce, there was Milton's Bakery, which is amazing baked goods and crackers and pizzas. They have their gluten-free cauliflower pizza, which I love. The Mama Chia Beverage Company, for example, another kombucha culture brewing company located in the city. So there was Casa de Bandini, there's the Carlsbad Premium Outlet Mall with lots of food and dining options, Windmill Food Halls, and then very large and luxury resorts, including the Omni and La Costa. These successes, and we overcame the challenges, so we know who these businesses are, and a national estimate of how much food that they are disposing that's recoverable. And so next steps is field verification. For example, very much the largest percentage of the edible food came from the wholesale food vendors and the distributors. So a lot of those are mom and pop, very small businesses. So a next step is to verify the nature of those businesses and verify who we think they are, and what they are, and whether they are actually producing and generating edible food that can be recovered. So I'm going to pass it over to Alyssa now to talk about the education and outreach program for the city.
All right, thank you, Tyla. I'm going to kind of speed through these real quickly, but the process depicted here provides a high-level outline of the action we have and will be taking in order to begin implementing our edible food recovery program. We will take a deeper dive into each one of these steps and provide examples of the outreach and education materials we have developed along the way. However, I'd just like to use this slide to highlight our multi-touch point approach to outreach and education. It was not a simple one-step stop approach and involving notification enforcement, but rather we broke it down into bite-sized pieces of outreach and education and delivered it through various means, including digital, print, and direct contact. You can go ahead and proceed to the next slide. So starting in August of 2020, we began to bring awareness to the issue of food waste and SB 1383 during our virtual food waste prevention workshop. The workshop utilized the food recovery hierarchy to educate businesses about food waste prevention, food donation, including legal protections such as the Good Samaritan Act and tax incentives, and finally, organics recycling. While the participants of this workshop found the contents very valuable, we found attendance to be lower than expected and understood it was likely difficult for businesses to work into their already busy schedules. As such, we developed the educational pamphlet you see here that captured the same content as our workshop and took our education directly to businesses. From June to November of 2021, with the assistance of one of our contractors, we visited restaurants, educating them about food waste prevention and associated laws. Next slide, please. Starting in December of 2021, we continue to bring this awareness directly to businesses through site visits with our future franchise waste hauler. During these site visits, we are assessing current service levels, providing recommendations to incorporate organic waste, and specifically educating businesses on SB 1383 requirements using the handout depicted here. We are also utilizing these initial site visits to collect correct contact information for responsible parties in charge of food donation for Tier 1 food generating businesses. Next slide, please. In conjunction with our site visits, we formally notified all identified Tier 1 businesses at the end of December 2021 and requested information regarding existing food donation in the form of a short survey provided to businesses in both hard copy format shown here, as well as a digital format accessed utilizing the QR code included in the notice. The notice sent to all identified Tier 1 businesses specifically notified them of edible food recovery requirements, as education as it pertains to organics recycling is being provided through our waste hauler transition. Next slide, please. Some of our next steps will involve a follow-up visit to all of our identified food generators to confirm them as either Tier 1 or Tier 2 to assess potential food recovery and donation, and to provide further outreach and education specific to food recovery and donation. Additionally, if businesses are not already donating excess edible food, we will assist them in making those connections with food recovery organizations during these assessments. Next slide, please. And lastly, following our edible food recovery assessments, we will begin compliance monitoring, which will entail obtaining donation agreements from food generators and donation inspections to ensure no donation dumping is taking place. Depicted here is our model food recovery agreement that we will be utilizing to record donation arrangements between food generators and food recovery organizations. And final slide, please. It has been wonderful to getting a chance to share the City of Carlsbad's ongoing efforts, and we sincerely hope you enjoyed and found this discussion helpful as you all begin to set up your own edible food recovery programs. If you have any further questions, please feel free to shoot us an email at the email on the slide. Thank you.